Kia ora, and welcome to my Why Ripples of Impact for Learning and Behaviour, Domain 1. Ka riri taku manu ki te poho o tamatia te maunga. Ka riri taku manu ki whakaropo te moana. Ko ohinatahi te whenua tipu. Kei ototahi au e noho ana. Ko Radcliffe-Price, tōku ingoa. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. So I came into teaching in my late 30s after studying and with two small children. I've taught for over 16 years in three different schools within Christchurch, the south of Christchurch. I've been a mentor teacher for beginning kaiako, an associate teacher for training teachers, and I was the lead arts and music teacher for two schools over 12 years. My interest in working with ākonga with learning and behaviour difficulties came at an early age, and that interest grew throughout my teaching career. In 2021, I undertook my Masters in Inclusive and Special Education with a view to becoming a specialist teacher. I'm now an RTLB at Te Huranui Cluster 36, and I'm in my second year RTLB role. Our practice covers quite a large geographic catchment, as far down south as Hinds and right up to Hallswell, which is in the southwest of Christchurch. We can't go from Mount Somers, Mount Hutt, across to Akaroa and Banks Peninsula. I am the liaison for RTLB for two schools. Over the past year and a half, I've been working in kura from our southernmost school in Hinds right up to our northernmost school in Hallswell and everywhere in between. My casework is varied with a number of learning and or behaviour cases. I've worked on a few kaiako cases and groups of kaiako, some school-wide initiatives such as PB4L and ESOL. Within our cluster, we've got three groups of RTLB called our STAR groups. We're project-based and we work on initiatives to support our 59 kura. I'm part of the group who's delivering professional development for beginning kaiako and their mentors to support them to feel empowered to deliver high-quality educational experiences for neurodiverse ākonga. So my learning and behaviour module that I've chosen for my why is practicing fiercely. My key learnings from the module: identifying and values alignment. So effective RTLB practice is grounded in clear professional identity, knowing your values, letting them drive your actions and not just your words, finding my stance. Relational advocacy, fierce practice means being persistent, having genuine advocacy for ākonga and pushing through barriers such as I'm too busy. When student wellbeing or progress is genuinely at stake, I don't back down when things get hard. Curiosity and collaborative stance. So I ask questions, seeking to understand and gently reframing conversations, keeps the mahi focused on shared goals and builds authentic partnerships. The ākonga being at the centre is a key learning for me. A strengths-based ākonga centre approach is non-negotiable. So every action should return to what's best for the learner. Integrity in action. So my stance is demonstrated through behaviour. Empathy, proactivity, solutions-focused, and professionalism. They're not just stated intentions. People need to experience me, RTLB, as trustworthy and on their side. My intentional courage. Fierce practice isn't reactive. It requires deliberate and considered decisions paired with the courage to act on them, even if that's uncomfortable. And my core takeaway, practicing fiercely means showing up with clarity and purpose, relational courage, and a commitment to keeping ākonga at the heart of every conversation and decision. So moving on to my mata, my application to practice. So a current case that I am working on, it's an ākonga case who has dyslexia, dyscalculia, and he experiences difficulties with regulation at school. During the last whaiwhakaro hui, I needed to really strongly advocate for the ākonga as discourse from kura and kaiako was becoming negative and affecting the relationship between them and the ākonga and within other people at the school. So I called a meeting Between myself, Kaiako, Senko and the principal, whānau were notified, but they couldn't attend. The purpose of the meeting was to find a way forward and try to reframe the narrative around the ākonga to be strengths-based and solution-focused. So going into the meeting, I was very aware that Kaiako were already feeling under pressure and that the school was also feeling under pressure. So I needed to anticipate that the conversation may default towards deficit thinking. I needed to have language to redirect it without dismissing their experiences. A key part of my role in this meeting was to notice the deficit drift and gently bring the focus back to being strengths-based with ākonga at the centre. So this refocusing wasn't always comfortable. It required me to hold a lot of tension between validating the stress and the reality for kaiako in the school, while advocating for a way of thinking about the learner that opened up possibilities rather than closing them down. It involved revisiting the importance of gathering ākonga voice a number of times throughout the conversation. So I did have to bring that up a number of times. Something that Kaiako and Kura had been overlooking throughout the casework was student voice. Throughout the meeting, I reminded myself of my stance, pushing through the barriers, having relational courage, and my commitment to keeping ākonga at the centre. I also wanted to be solutions focused and to come to the meeting presenting ideas and strategies for consideration. So I did come with a plan. I was really aware of how much stress kaiako was under, and I didn't want to add to their anxiety, and I didn't want to be an add-on. So I came really prepared with strategies and also some language around how the meeting was going to go. The strategies that the team agreed on moving forward are all grounded in strengths-based, ākonga-focused approach. So sustaining that frame beyond this meeting will require ongoing reinforcement with the school team. So part of my way forward is regular check-ins to see if these strategies have been implemented. At the next whaiwhakaaro review, I want to check that they're in place, but I also want to check that the team are actively seeking ākonga voice and that their lens has shifted. So ripples of impact. So during the meeting and through lots of discussion and reflection, the kaiako and the senko and the principal, they began to see ākonga's behaviours as communication and not as defiant or disruptive. So from there, we were able to move to be solutions focused, and we looked at strategies that could be implemented to support ākonga. 3 key strategies came from the meeting. One was writing an escalation plan and including ākonga in discussions and gathering their voice. There had been an escalation plan done by a previous teacher, however, that hadn't been revisited. So another strategy from that was to be revisiting the escalation plan once a week for the first few weeks and ensuring that the student had a really clear understanding of how it worked and that it was being followed up. Another strategy was a check-in, check-out system for ākonga at the beginning and the end of each day and at the end of learning blocks. So for them to be involved in setting the goals and the check-in, check-out, and their voice to be heard and recorded throughout the implementation. Another strategy was we looked at the assessment of skills and unsolved problems, the ASUP from Collaborative and Proactive Solutions, Lives in the Balance. We completed that, the kaiako and the senko completed that with support from me. And the next step was to have a CPS conversation with ākonga. So another agreed strategy that we have put in place is one of my colleagues who's had training in CPS and Lives in the Balance in Aotearoa. She has had some training, so she's come on board to support me and to support this case throughout the CPS part of it. So the impact and the change in practice. There has been some implementation of strategies from this mahi, although it's still early days and it is taking some time for things to move along. Kaiako has engaged in and written the ASAP with the support from RTLB. They've written part of the escalation plan, though no student voice has been gathered yet. And RTLB have facilitated one CPS conversation with Ākonga. One thing that Kaiako has an impact that has changed their practice is their reframing around how they see the difficulties for Ākonga. It is hard to measure the impact at this stage, though, and yeah, as I was saying, that Ākonga has shifted a bit more positive towards Ākonga difficulties. I would say the biggest impact has been for my own practice. So lots of learning has come out of this module for me and things that I've implemented within my practice. A learning was from the meeting is to frame Ākonga strengths right from the beginning of the casework, including advocating for student voice really early on and to keep doing that. I've also had an opportunity to co-work CPS through this work, which is adding to my knowledge and my understanding and building my skills, which I'll be able to take on further in my own mahi and with a view to doing some of the CPS training myself, either later this year or next year. And something else I've worked on is the escalation plan. So we did have a cluster escalation plan that many of us were using. However, it was very simple, and I felt that it could be better. So I tweaked it to reflect student voice a bit more, and I added some information for Kaiako as prompts when engaging with the tool. I'll continue to use this within casework because I like the way that it is now, and I think that it has a little bit more information that can be implemented more successfully, supporting student voice. So that is my why presentation. Thank you very much for watching.